Speaking of quarterbacks, Ryan, last time we talked about a quarterback, we talked about Kyler Murray, and we talked about the contract that he received from the Arizona Cardinals. And since then, news has leaked on verbiage in that contract regarding study film session for Kyler Murray and a minimum of how many hours he has to do it during the week. And we didn't really talk about that on our show when it first came out. But now that Kyler has kind of come out of nowhere, had a unscheduled news conference on Thursday to defend himself against the backlash he's received from this independent study addendum that was added to his contract. So before I go all in on this, man, how you feel about this? Because this is one of your boys.
Yeah, it's certainly weird, right? And it seems like it's nothing we've ever seen before. One thing that I think will happen is I think we'll probably see this in just about every contract moving forward in some respects, right? Maybe not everybody has to watch film. Maybe for others it's a weight room requirement or something. But we literally just saw this. The news came out, I don't know, an hour or two ago. The Zion Williamson has something similar in his contract, not necessarily film, but he can only be at a total percentage of body fat, or body fat and weight can only combine to make some type of number that they decided was fit. And I kind of think it's a situation of nobody did this because they didn't think of it. But now that somebody's thought of it and teams are like, oh, we can do this, I can see pretty much any contract moving forward, any of the big ones anyway, having some type of clause in there like this. And Kyler is, of course, going to be the lightning rod because he's the first, and everyone's like, oh, well, we were questioning your work ethic anyway, so this just proves it to us. And part of his response, I was the #1 pick, a Heisman winner, undefeated in high school, top 10 picks in MLB and NBA draft, or MLB and NFL draft. Like, how could I do that if I didn't have a work ethic? Which I think is a pretty valid point. But then somebody asked him, well, then why would the Cardinals do this? And he's like, I'm here to talk about football. So not necessarily a great look right there. He kind of came out, had his response, and then just shut down all the questions after it. It's, again, man, of course it's not a good look because it's something that we've never seen before, so it's certainly weird now. But I think probably by the time we get to it on this next third or fourth quarterback contract, where even if it's not this exact wording, I think it's going to be something similar where there's like a weird clause in there, and I think that's just kind of the way things are going to move going forward.
We've seen clauses before in contracts. We've seen weight clauses and things like that as far as linemen in football or certain athletes in basketball. We've seen it before. I think Charles Barkley actually might have had one that it wasn't major news back then. Internet wasn't the way it was. And we've seen ones where you weren't allowed to do certain things, play certain sports, things of that nature. You couldn't play basketball and stuff. But for a quarterback to be mandated to study a certain number of hours of film, and obviously this brings back memories of Jamarcus Russell and being sent blank tapes for the weekend, and then he comes back from the weekend saying, yeah, I watched it, it was great, I watched this route and studied this, blah, blah, and there was nothing on the tapes. So he was obviously lying. And to see it again come up, and Kyler to bring up his accomplishments, and I'm already being questioned behind the 8 ball because I'm only 5'10" and I can't afford to take any shortcuts, no pun intended, all this stuff. And then a correct question was brought to him. Well, then why was this in your contract? If you're doing this work already, this isn't something that is in everyone else. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think this was in his contract. Now, again, we don't know. We don't see all the verbiage, but it wasn't, you figured it'd be brought to light like it was with Kyler Murray. And so we've seen quarterbacks get contracts recently. Kyler's isn't the first one to cap in the last couple of years or something. And so this is just a new thing. No. We've seen contracts be signed throughout the last few months by quarterbacks, and none of them had this you have to study game film clause in them, but it is for Kyler. Yeah, so how are you going to, how do you defend this?
I think the other teams just didn't think about it. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if all these quarterbacks have just mandates from their coaches anyway. Like, hey, watch this amount of hours of film, and it's just not in the contract. They just understand like it's part of the job. And right. It seems maybe like Kyler didn't understand that. There's something about him playing video games while he's watching film, which if he's going to have his iPad on or do independent film study or whatever, I don't really know how you police what else he's doing. Like, how do you know he's not getting a massage and there's the film on the table, so the iPad's running, he's just not doing it, right? So, like, I think So there's a couple things. Like, I still do think it's just something that the Cardinals obviously felt they needed to put it in there one way or another. But I think even if other teams felt like their quarterbacks in the past weren't watching enough film, they just didn't think to add it in the contract that, hey, you have to have this much iPad film time, or do like whatever it is, right? However they're actually going to measure it. I just don't think that that's something that they thought of, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that we see in some of the contracts, some of the newer quarterback deals moving forward, right? Like when Justin Herbert gets his deal, or Lamar Jackson, who's renegotiating a deal right now. I wouldn't be surprised if that's if a similar clause is in there, basically. And then number two, again, I had no idea how you're going to try to police this thing. It seems almost impossible.
There's an easy way to police it.
Like if Kyler didn't want to watch film, he's not going to watch film.
But there's
find some way around it.
There's an easy way to police it. You police it by mandating that it's done in the facility. It's done at the Cardinals, whatever facility that they do this at, and not at home where it can't be monitored. And if you don't trust your quarterback enough that is involved in the mandate, that's a problem. Look, there's no question that Kyler is talented. He wouldn't be where he is if he wasn't. And he felt the need to bring this up, where I refuse to let my work ethic, my preparing, to be in question. I put in an incomprehensible amount of time and blood, sweat, tears, and work into what I do, whether it's football or baseball. People can't comprehend the amount of time it takes to do two sports at a high level in college, let alone be the first person to do it ever at my size. It's funny, but you can refuse to let your work ethic and preparation be questioned, but it's going to be questioned when you start the season off hot as a pistol and are in the MVP race, and then you get hurt, you come back, the second half of the season, it's nowhere near what the first half of the season is, and you even lose the Detroit Lions and look disinterested while doing it. And you brought it up that it almost seemed like he didn't study any film of the Lions because he didn't feel he needed to because it's the Lions. Now, look, that I can understand.
After the game.
Right.
It was like, yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, so he's admitting to the fact that he's not doing his job off the field to make him better on the field. And look, I understand he's had a better 3-year career so far than Jamarcus Russell, but Jamarcus Russell made it 3 years in the NFL without doing any homework. So apparently it can be done just on talent alone. If he wants to continue to get better and continue to add to his accolades of Heisman winner and all of that, he's got to start studying his film.
You don't think that he has a point, like, even with the size thing, right? Because Jamarcus Russell wasn't 5'11", 5'10", whatever Kyler is. You don't think Kyler has any type of a point where he's like, hey, obviously I put in some work on my game, which is why.
Oh, no, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that at all. You can work on your game all you want in ways of working on your mechanics and getting in the weight room and all that stuff, maybe hanging upside down to get a little bit taller. But studying film so that what you're facing coming up in the next week, on the next Sunday or Thursday or Monday, whenever they play, you figured that would just be a natural part of the job as a quarterback especially.
Yeah, maybe he did it all 16 weeks except the week they played the Lions. Or 16 out of 17 weeks.
Right. Well, I do think this clause is hilarious. I think his coming out and defending himself immediately is interesting, and the time's going to tell. The product is going to tell. We'll see how he reacts on the field and how he responds. Big fat contract. He's done better each year. Now he's got to do better than this. You just got paid one of the biggest contracts in football. You got Aaron Rodgers. I think it's just Aaron Rodgers is ahead of him as far as a yearly salary. We talked about this the other week. It's Aaron Rodgers for sure. He's at 50. I think someone else was a little bit above Kyler.
I thought Deshaun was above him too, but Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it might have been Deshaun that was above him. Yeah, and then it was Kyler, and then it's Mahomes. So you're with 2 out of the 3 names are elite company. The other one is infamous right now, but you got to get better. You got to not lay the egg that you laid in the playoffs this past year. You got to do better than not making the playoffs the year before or having a losing record the year before that. He's gotten better each year. The team's gotten better each year. You got to continue it, and it looks like if you study and do your homework, you'll do better on the tests on Sundays. So we will see.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN, and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls, contests, and other content.